All right, welcome to the Young Turks. It's Monday, so that usually means we have a gigantic show ahead for you guys, and today is no exception. This show is, well, it's packing. Jesse Ventura on later this hour, and we're going to have to go ahead and tweet that out, okay? American conspiracies. All different conspiracy theories throughout the history of America, including the current day. I'll tell you what, man, you know I'm not huge into conspiracies. But as you see what Jesse wrote, you're like, well, some of those are definitely true, right? And others, I don't know. We're going to have that discussion. It's a hell of a book, man. It really is a very, very interesting book, and I don't often say that. So he's going to join us a little later in this hour. Now, Rahm Emanuel's in a little bit of trouble. That's always good. I'm going to start with that in a little bit. But the Oscars. So I watched the whole thing, and there's three really interesting moments from the Oscars that we're going to do in the third hour. First of all, TYT was invited to the red carpet. We had a pass. We had a pass. No, it's true, and we did behind the scenes. Normally, we always do everything first on this show and then put it up on YouTube later. This, you might have already seen if you were following our YouTube channel. Well, we're going to break it down for you in the third hour here. And I think that went really well. Number two, we had a Kanye West moment. Instead, it was an older white woman jumping in and trying to snatch the mic. So that's what was the Kanye West moment. But put all that aside, I'm going to say controversial things in the third hour about the Oscars. Controversy headed our way. I'm going to be very un-PC. Trouble ahead in the third hour. All right, so let's get started. Oh, Sarah Palin's in the news. Everybody's in the news. All right, let's get started. First, as usual, you know me. What's funny is that I get worked up by everything, right? And I watch the Oscars. I'm worked up by that. I'm worked up by Ventura's, etc. But the thing that gets me the most mad every time is two guys, Geithner and Rahm. Okay, so two favorable pieces about Tim Geithner over the weekend. One is in the New Yorker. It's by John Cassidy, and then another is in the Atlantic. Now, the Atlantic piece, to be fair to Joshua Green, who wrote it, is a little less favorable. Okay, but the theme is, once again, you plebeians wouldn't know what you're talking about. Tim Geithner saved the economy. Simon Johnson, former chief economist of the International Monetary Fund, now at MIT, says, no, he saved the banks while destroying the economy. Okay, and that's such an important distinction, and I can't believe that grown-ass men whose job is to report the news can't figure that out. How the banks have been helped without any regulation, how could that not be the focus of the story? To write pieces about how Tim Geithner saved the economy. What a joke. J-O-K-E. Joke. Guys must be jokers because you make jokes all day. No. All right, we're going to talk to Ventura about that too. Hey. Tim Geithner's the worst. Anyway, all right, so that's enough said on that for now, because you guys know the whole story, about why Geithner didn't really save the economy, he saved the banks, and as we talked about with Moore, we'll talk about with Ventura, the second crash is coming. Ventura says the same thing. The second crash is coming, because we didn't do anything. We didn't fix a damn thing. In fact, that leads to the relevant part of this story. I mean, the reporting gets me enraged, right? The relevant part is, today we find out that, yes, in fact, almost all of the regulation of the banks will remain in the Fed, Federal Reserve. If you remember, the Fed is the organization that did not regulate the banks at all. That led to this economic collapse. So in case you were unclear about who wanted it to be in the Fed and who didn't, of course, the entire banking lobby, they threw everything they had at the Senate, at the Congress, to make sure that the Senate version of that bill, the so-called reform bill, makes sure that the real oversight and the real regulation of the banking industry still remains at the Fed. Now, why did the banking industry spend so much money to make sure that happened? Because they love the Fed, because the Fed does not regulate them. It lets them take wild-ass risks so they can make money in the short run and then hand off the problems to us. The more you read about the Fed, the more insane it is. They print money. They have control over our entire monetary policy. They're not at all elected. And no matter who's in power, the Fed runs things. Ben Bernanke, Fed leader under George W. Bush and under Barack Obama. Alan Greenspan, under different Democratic and Republican administrations. It's the same guys that control the money, no matter who, quote unquote, wins. Makes our elections into a fraud, a farce. So those bad guys back in charge. They will continue not regulating the banks for the foreseeable future. Now that bill has not been passed yet, so if you want to hold out hope that somebody's going to change it, good luck to you. Good luck to you. See how that works out for you. But the initial and most important cave-in has already happened. Man, this country, man, it's not. One wonders if it's even a democracy. All right, we'll talk to Ventura about that. He makes some damning points about that. All right, now on to Rahm Emanuel. You know how Eric Massa stepped down the other day? He's now quoted as saying that Rahm Emanuel is the son of the devil's spawn. Okay, he's not playing. Now, the Massa situation is very, very interesting, too. He's giving interviews now, and in one of the interviews, he said, look, let me tell you what happened with me. Now, of course, for those of you who don't remember, Congressman Massa's from the 29th District of New York, didn't take any corporate money, ran on his own, won a seat that was previously thought to be unwinnable by people like Rahm Emanuel, and he said he was worried about recurrence of cancer. That's why he was stepping down. But we heard all along that there were sexual harassment charges. Now he's basically saying, yes, of course, that had a big role to play in it. And he gave details. Now, this is his side, okay? We don't know the other side of it. His side is that they were at a wedding. They had about 15 gin and tonics. And somebody was trying to go into, saying that he would sleep with the bride or something. And he came around and said to apparently one of his male staffers, like, rustled up his hair and said, why don't I frack you instead? I think he used a different word, but that's the word he used in the interview. Now, if that's all there is to it, dude, don't resign over that. What are you, crazy? Okay? Now, I don't know. That's just his side. You don't know the other guy's side, right? And he might have gone a lot further than that. We don't know, right? But Massa said something interesting after that explanation. He said, oh, it was the White House and the Democrats in the House that threw me under the bus. He said, all of a sudden, I don't vote for the health care bill. They need votes on the health care bill. And all of a sudden, allegations about sexual harassment emerge in the ethics committee. Now, is that really true? I don't know. Again, maybe he's covering his tracks. I'm trying to keep it real. Even though I like Massa, you never know. I mean, if he did it, et cetera, right? But it is, as I said on the first date, kind of curious. The one guy who doesn't take corporate money is the one guy you find under the bus. So, all right. So now, for Massa to go on the record and to say, hey, it was the White House and the leadership in the House who encouraged these kind of charges and who put this guy forward, that's strong language. Okay. I mean, that's all of a sudden, that's an issue. It's one thing for me to speculate. It's another thing for Massa to say. Now, are you ready for this? I don't want to give this guy a plug, but there's no way around it. Eric Massa is going to be on the Glenn Beck program tomorrow for an hour. JR, get ready to clip that up, man. I don't know. That is fascinating. Now, I guess Beck is going to take the angle of, you see, it was, the White House and the House leadership that, tried to get rid of Massa and then, demonize the White House, et cetera. I don't know what angle he's going to take. Who knows what that deranged mind comes up with, right? But I'm sure Beck is going to try to use Massa for his purposes. Massa's obviously using Beck for his purposes. We'll see what comes out of that. I mean, an hour with Massa on Glenn Beck, that's very interesting. Now, what I started with was Rahm Emanuel. Why? In regards to this story. Because, look, this has added fuel to the fire. now there are more articles on both sides defending Rahm Emanuel and saying Rahm Emanuel is not right for the job, and the controversy builds and builds and builds. Axelrod had to respond to it, saying, "Oh, I don't think 10 people outside the Washington give a damn about this." Yeah. Don't be ridiculous. Okay, look, is it important to somebody who's trying to figure out how to pay the bills, who's playing politics between Rahm Emanuel, David Axelrod, etc.? No, it's not enormously important. Are some people paying attention to it because it's enormously important who has access to the president and who the president is listening to? Of course they are. Come on. They just want to try to minimize the damage because this thing's blowing up, right? Now, but it blowing up is a really good thing for us. Why? Because the more a controversy builds and the more ruckus there is around it, the more of an urge there is in Washington to just get beyond it. And how do you get behind it? You remove the problem. In this case, the problem is Rahm Emanuel. So if they do what they normally do, which is panic and go, there's a controversy, who do we have to throw overboard? Van Jones, gone, right? Here in this case, there's a controversy, who's on fire? Rahm Emanuel's on fire. Push him overboard. I hope. There's the famous line from Billy Joel, of course, that we use from time to time. We didn't start the fire. But in this case, we kind of did. So now there is an actual fire. And now all of these Washington reporters on both sides. And understand, I've told you a long time about this, and we just had a long discussion about this in one of the post games, which you should check out. Look, why are the reporters so interested in this, and why are some of them stepping up to defend Rahm and others attacking him, etc.? These reporters have an incentive they don't tell you about, that they don't report on, right? It's an example we use is from sports. Wade Boggs would have terrible articles written about him over and over, and I never understood why. And then Ben told me, Ben used to cover sports for some period of time, Ben Mankiewicz, former co-host of my co-host on What the Flick, etc. He said Wade Boggs was a total ass to all the reporters. So the reporters had an incentive to write terrible articles about Wade Boggs. Now, whether it's true or untrue, look, generally, if you want to do a hatchet job on somebody, you could find bad things to write about. So if he's a jerk to you, you're like, oh, Wade Boggs, interesting. Let me write an article about Wade Boggs. Right? And that's how it works. Now, in politics, it's even more amplified. Because if Rahm Emanuel is the guy who's your main source, that makes you a vaunted reporter in Washington, the one that gets you the big scoops, that gets you promoted, well, you've got an incentive to protect Rahm Emanuel. So when Emanuel is being attacked and it looks like, there's some chance he's going to go, all these reporters who have been getting all their great scoops from Rahm Emanuel over the years are like, no. Operation Protect Rahm. Because if he goes, there goes their source. Now, it might be true that the reporters on the opposite side might also have an incentive. Hey, if they're getting leaks from Axelrod or Gibbs or whoever is against Rahm Emanuel in this fight, well, maybe they got an incentive to protect their source, or if Rahm Emanuel is not giving them leaks, kind of like the Wade Boggs situation, then they have an incentive to throw Rahm Emanuel under the bus. So all that is being played out underneath the, what you see reported in the stories. Now, we've covered all these stories a lot on the show, so I don't want to go over the new ones in detail for you guys, but the essence is the same. People say, one side saying Rahm Emanuel was supposed to get us victories, policy victories, and electoral victories. He has done neither, right? And the other side saying, no, Rahm Emanuel's great, and if Obama had just listened to him instead of the other three idiots, Axelrod, Gibbs, and Jarrett, they'd be in much better shape because Rahm Emanuel had been arguing all along that we should do a really, really weak version of health care, which would have passed a lot easier. Now, would it have been real reform? Who cares? It would have passed, right? And that you should have given in to Republicans on the civilian trials, not had civilian trials of detainees, screw principle, etc. Now, when I read both stories, both of them make me hate Rahm Emanuel. One side proves and shows that he's done a terrible job, and the other side brags about what a right-winger he is and how he's driven Obama further and further to the right, and that was a genius move. So if Rahm is on fire, if they do push him overboard, politically speaking, I will be ecstatic. And the countdown continues. I made a bold prediction. When I saw the first story from Milbank on the Washington Post, I said, that dude, somebody get a fire extinguisher because he's on fire. And I gave him 2 months. I'm still on the clock. Let's see what happens. Oh, if it happens within 2 months, I'm going to declare the biggest victory of all time. I'm going to go nuts, man. I don't even know if you want that to happen because I'm going to be slightly unbearable. Okay. Now, let's take a break here. But I want to come back with, speaking of Beck, he just finds a way, man. How many hills can he go over the top of? We got another one for you. He's against social justice, of course. And then Palin says she's the same as God. I'm not kidding. Young Turks. All right, back on the Young Turks. Now let's go to Glenn Beck. He apparently is against social justice. Now, you think, oh, come on now. That can't be true. Who's against social justice? Who's against justice? Right? But he also says he's against democracy. Now, again, you think, like, come on, he can't really say that. But he is. He says, well, his excuse is, no, we're a republic, we're not really a democracy. All right, now, apparently, if you're pursuing social justice, you're a Nazi and a communist. Once again, you think it can't be true, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the clip for you. Okay, this is from his show, and at different times, by the way, on his TV show, he has held up, while talking about the same issue, a swastika and the sickle and the hammer of the communists. Okay, so let's watch. Or let's listen. I'm sorry, clip number 6.
Because they just can't do it on their own. Isn't it weird, as we've made so much progress, that society has gotten worse? That's strange. See, the idea behind progressives, and this is why, and I'm begging you, I am begging you, your right to religion and freedom to exercise religion and read all of the passages in the Bible as you want to read them and as your church wants to preach them are going to come under the ropes here in probably the next year. If it lasts that long, it'll be the next year. I beg you, look for the words social justice or economic justice on your church website. If you find it, run as fast as you can. Social justice and economic justice, they are code words. Now, the idea, hang on, who's saying, am I advising people to leave their church? Yes. If I'm going to Jeremiah Wright's church, yes, leave your church.
Yes, that's probably good advice at Jeremiah's
Social
church.
justice and economic justice, they are code words. If you have a priest that is pushing social justice, go find another parish. Go alert your bishop and tell them, excuse me, are you down with this whole social justice thing? I don't care what the church is. If it's my church, I'm alerting the church authorities, excuse me, what's this social justice thing? And if they say, yeah, we're all in that social justice thing, I'm in the wrong place.
Possible they need to be illuminated to the hidden meaning behind some of these terms. I think a lot of people adopt these green sort of policies without realizing what
That's a very good chance that people don't know what it is. That's why you have to educate yourself. Social justice, and tonight I'm going to show you history you have never seen before. Pat saw some of the history that I'm showing tonight. You saw some of the clips. Have you ever seen anything like this American history that I'm going to show tonight?
No.
If I told you that I had film of this, you would say, no way. Would you not?
Yeah. Yeah, because I've never heard of it.
If I told you that while communists were in the White House advising the president and making policy, communists in the White House, the communist movement had filled the Madison Square Garden to the rim with cheering communists. They weren't hiding. They were talking about how great their relationship is with the Democratic Party, etc., etc. If I told you that, you'd say, okay, what? But how about if I told you this? At the same time, the Nazis had a convention at Madison Square Garden, And right there on the swastika, they had the big red banners with the white circle and the swastika. And right next to it, a big red, white, and blue American flag banner.
I'm gonna show you history you've never seen before. You know why? Because it's not really history. Now, does that mean that there were never communists in this country? Ever? There were never anybody that supported the Nazis ever in this country? No, of course not. Can you find that in American history? You can. In fact, Jesse Ventura, who's going to be on the show later, writes about how Prescott Bush, the great grandfather of George W. Bush, helped German steel interests that were helping the Nazi Party. And he did it for money. And it was before the war, and then, of course, it was after the war, and so he got in some trouble for that. Okay, now does that make Bush a Nazi? It doesn't. That was his great-grandfather from a long time ago. But yes, there have been Nazis or Nazi supporters or et cetera, communists in this country. But you get the trick he's doing. It's called the same sentence strategy. I just came up with that term. Bush did it for attacking Iraq. Now, he did at times say it, but oftentimes he wouldn't say Iraq did 9/11. He would just say 9/11 was terrible. Oh my God, they attacked us. And you know what? Iraq is in the same part of the world that 9/11 happened from, and Saddam Hussein is terrible. And he keeps saying it in the same sentence, so that by the time we invaded Iraq, 69% of Americans thought that Saddam Hussein was personally responsible for 9/11. Because they kept using it in the same sentence, and nobody ever pointed it out. Beck is the master of that. So in the middle of those stories, he started talking about social justice, then he switched to Nazis and communists. Same sentence. Did he explain how they were connected? How the church that preaches social justice is connected to Nazis? No, never connected it. But it's the same sentence. Nazis, communists, social justice, fascist, communists. And then the guys listening to Glenn Beck go, I don't know, I guess if they say social justice, they must be Nazis. Now, get to the point about social justice in the church. I mean, can you believe he says that if your church is preaching social justice, first of all, you should alert the church authorities. Oh, that's great. Imagine you go up to your church authorities and you're like, I don't know if you know this, but they're preaching justice in this church. What should they be preaching instead? Injustice? I mean, look at how they turn things on their heads. And now the people who wrap themselves in the church were like, oh, the church. The minute that they find it slightly inconvenient, if you actually teach Jesus' words in the New Testament, they're like, oh, leave the church. Who cares? Leave it right away. Beck says, if my church is talking about justice, I know I'm in the wrong place. Well, that part is definitely true. Social justice is apparently code words for communism and Nazism. Well, that's got to be news to Jesus. When he did his Sermon on the Mount, I guess he was preaching fascism and communism. Unreal. You think they care about the church? They don't care about the church. You think they care about justice? Obviously, they're telling you they don't care about justice. Right? All they care about is how to make the bucks. So if somebody says at church, hey, maybe we should look out for the poor, Glenn Beck says, oh, no, that's economic justice. No, you crush the poor. You help the bankers. You help the corporations. You help the biggest people, the richest people in America. Now, if you told Beck that, he said, oh, no, I'm not interested in helping the bankers. But when you ask him, hey, should we regulate the banks so they don't take these risks with our money? He says, oh, no, don't regulate them. Don't regulate them. No, the government should get out of the business of regulating banks and let them run amok. And in the end, well, will you look at that? The bankers wound up with all the money, and the poor got crushed. And if you talk about, hey, maybe we should help the poor in church, no, that you're at the wrong place. Social and economic justice, no, we can't have that. What they're trying to do is they're trying to drive out any remnants of the decent Jesus, the one that delivered the Sermon on the Mount, the one that cared about the poor, the needy, the weakest. They're trying to drive that from the church. Now, I'm not a big fan of Christianity or any of the religions, right? But if you read I tell you all the time, read the Bible, right? And it's got downsides, and I talk about it all the time. But it has upsides, too. If you believe in any of the upsides, if you read the New Testament at all, and you heard this, I mean, the number one guy Jesus would throw out on his ass the minute he came back down, if you believe it, is Glenn Beck. So I could just see that conversation. Jesus comes down and he's like, so you're to tell me I shouldn't talk about social justice, that makes me a Nazi. That I shouldn't talk about economic justice and helping the poor, because that makes me a Nazi. I'd love to see how Glenn answered that. These people are using your anger and, unfortunately, for some of their viewers, your naivete to try to make more money off your ass. And if anyone dares complain that the banks this year, in the middle of a gigantic economic collapse that they caused, are making record bonuses, if you dare complain, you're a communist and a Nazi. That's Glenn Beck for you. Young Turks. Back on the Young Turks with Governor Jesse Ventura, author of the new book, American Conspiracies. Governor, great to have you back on the Young Turks.
Great to be on again, Jink. Thank you.
All right. You outline a lot of conspiracies throughout American history here, including one against Abraham Lincoln, one against FDR. Have forces been working against our democracy throughout the history of this country?
I think that there's been a lot of things that have gone on that have been certainly swept under the rug throughout the years, and certainly we're not taught these things in our history books at all. I found the amazing thing about the Abraham Lincoln murder was that, I really didn't know that 8 other people had been tried, all convicted, and 4 of them sentenced to death, including the first woman in America. And I followed up on that by asking my nephew, who was 15, what he had learned in school, what he knew about Abraham Lincoln, and he said he just had it 2 weeks earlier. And again, all he knew about was John Wilkes Booth shooting him in the Ford Theater and getting chased down and killed in the farmhouse.
And in fact, of course, it's much larger than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were 8 other people involved. The whole conspiracy actually involved, they were going to try to kill Lincoln, Vice President Johnson, Secretary of State Seward, as well as Ulysses Grant, the general.
Why do you think it's relevant that they only discuss John Wilkes Booth and not the whole conspiracy?
I think it's relevant because it always sets us up that only one person ever does it, and that no one's ever involved. It's the old lone nut thing. And really, most people think that John Wilkes Booth was probably a lone nut when he truly was not.
So if they're not lone nuts, all these assassins throughout American history, what are they? Are they all part of this a similar movement, different movements?
Well, it's hard to say. They all, the ones in the 60s all had a common denominator except the Kennedy murders. But if you look at Malcolm X, if you look at Martin Luther King, and if you look at John Lennon, all of them were under heavy CIA surveillance when they were killed. And I, being a former Navy SEAL, understand that before you do an op, you do plenty of surveillance and plenty of intel work to make sure it goes correctly. And the real only common denominator to the whole thing is the CIA.
You think the CIA might have had Lennon killed?
Well, there's a good possibility because Mark David Chapman was very strange. If you read about how that killing took place, Lennon was under heavy CIA surveillance. Reagan had just won, and Lennon was making a huge comeback at the time, and they thought that he could galvanize the left because he was very liberal. And Chapman, if you look at his background, it's nothing like what the media told us about. The media told us he was infatuated with the Beatles, infatuated with John Lennon, and that's why he killed him. That's not true at all. In fact, he could have cared less about the Beatles. His actual favorite musician was Todd Rundgren, and he hated guns. And yet the night he killed Lennon, he dropped into a professional shooting position, put 5 rounds in Lennon that a drill instructor would be proud of, and then his most strange behavior was when he was done. He had 3 opportunities to escape. He could have either ran into Central Park, he could have got onto the subway a block away and disappeared, or he could have just disappeared on the Manhattan streets. Instead, he backed up into the shadows, dropped the gun, pulled out J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye, and was reading it when the cops arrived.
Governor Ventura, I hear that and I think, So why? What, or how, more interestingly? I mean, do you think he wasn't deranged, or do you think that the CIA drugged him?
I think he very well could have been. You know, you know about the MK Ultra program of mind control and all that. That's all documented in the 50s and 60s. There was a good chance, in my opinion, he was what you would call, quote unquote, a Manchurian candidate.
So do you think that stuff works? Because I was never under the impression that they had successfully done that.
Well, we on my television show we looked into it, and I think that it absolutely can work if they have someone for over a year, because hypnosis is a very powerful thing. And you can't get someone under hypnosis the first time generally to commit an act of violence or a crime, but you certainly could do it over, say, a year or two if you had control of that person. And we actually met a guy who claims to be a Manchurian candidate. I thought he was crazy, and when I got done interviewing him, I turned to my crew after he left, and I said, well, if we don't believe it, he certainly does. But the unique thing about this guy was he got involved in a bad auto accident and was injured, and he started getting his memory back. He went in for an MRI, and they found 4 microchips in his body. The MRI went ballistic. Now, how did he get them in his body? And what do they do?
We're talking to Governor Jesse Ventura, former governor of Minnesota, of course, and the TV show he's referring to is on True TV, and his book is American Conspiracies. You mentioned the media on several occasions there, Governor. Why do you think they play along?
I don't know. You know, the media seems to, well, I think the reason that they play along with the government so well is they don't want to lose their access. Because if they start asking difficult, uncomfortable questions, they're not going to be let into press conferences and things like that, so they'll lose their ability to be able to report on the government. And I think that's one of the things the government holds over the media, that if you step too far and ask too many pointed questions, we won't let you in anymore.
I want to go back to one of the earlier chapters in your book about FDR and the plot against him. Also something that isn't talked about very much, because I think that might tie in a lot of other strands that we're talking about here. Tell us, for a lot of people that are not familiar with that, what was the plot against FDR?
Well, basically, it was a plot done by the Wall Street, pretty much. It was done by the heavy finance people. They thought that FDR was going far too socialist, coming out of the Depression and all that, probably much the way they go after President Obama today for his health care, you know, bringing socialism into America. Like, you know, we don't dare have any type of socialism here at all. I believe you have to have a balance between the two. We saw capitalism pure didn't work. We just went through it when they took off all the deregulation on Wall Street. Look what we ended up with. So I think there's a fine line you have to. You don't want to go all socialist either, because Russia fell because of that. So you've got to have a combination, in my opinion, of both.
But fill us on some of the details. How did they try to get?
The FDR. Okay, what they tried to do, all these big shots, they literally tried to replace FDR with a coup. And they picked out General Smedley Butler, who was going to replace FDR temporarily, but the problem was Smedley Butler had won a couple of Congressional Medal of Honor, and they picked the wrong guy because he informed on them and reported it all, and they all got caught, yet none of them were prosecuted, nor none of them ever, the thing was basically hushed under the rug.
So, and I agree with you when you say General Butler should be a hero that we should all talk about and we should know more about, because he helped to save the country in a lot of ways. And, you know, it's an interesting phenomenon that you point to, where capitalists sometimes, in order to make more money, want to be able to control other governments, because General Butler also talked about how he went to Latin America and did the bidding of corporate America earlier in his career, whenever they wanted to control the oil in Mexico or the fruit in Central America, that they would use the Marines, basically.
Absolutely.
And so they want to have some degree of control over here as well. But, you know, and so have these conspiracies happen? Well, the FDR thing's a fact, obviously, and we see many others. We talked on an earlier time that you appeared on the program about the Gulf of Tonkin, and that was a conspiracy and a lie by the American government. The question is, how does that translate to now? I mean, are there still the same forces at play? Are they doing the same tricks? Are they different tricks?
I think it's worse today. I think it's the old cliche. They got away with it before, so they certainly can get away with it now. And I think it's actually worse today with all of that going on.
Why
today,
worse?
The government uses national security to cover up anything they do wrong. You know, if they break the law or violate the Constitution or whatever they do, and it gets exposed, the first thing they do then is call it national security, sweep it under the rug, and lock it up for 50 years where we can't see anything. Classic case is Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, when you look at him, okay, what they told us is this guy was a Marine private, got out of the Marines, defected to the Soviet Union, married a Russian girl, came back, got angry at Kennedy, and killed him. Well, if that's the case, why would anything need to be locked up because of national security? Did you know today you still cannot get Lee Harvey Oswald's tax return because of national security? Now, how would his tax return affect national security? Well, if he was a paid CIA agent or something and got money from the government, it would leave a paper trail. And if he was connected to any of the alphabet agencies, which I believe he was, that would lead you right there by seeing his tax return.
Governor Ventura, how do you think the CIA, which you mentioned in a lot of these plots, is connected to the business interests on Wall Street, et cetera, which you also mentioned as organizing some of these plots?
I'm sorry, come at me with that again.
How do you think the CIA is connected to the big business interests?
Well, you know, after reading Colonel Fletcher Prouty's book, the CIA is a complete fraud in what it does. They tell us that it's to gather intelligence and all that, but the reality is the CIA's job is to go out and start wars in third world countries, according to Colonel Fletcher Prouty.
Why is that?
Because you want me to go into all that? Okay.
I mean, because it's a natural question. Why would they want to start a war?
I got to back up then. You got to go to the end of World War II. Right before we dropped the bombs on Japan, we thought that we were going to have to invade. So they moved huge armaments into Okinawa. Well, then they subsequently dropped the 2 bombs and they didn't have to invade. Well, Fletcher Prouty, in his book, told what happened to all those armaments. You know what happened to them?
What's that?
Half of them were sent to Korea and half of them were given to Ho Chi Minh. Because what took place at the end of World War II was a meeting that Prouty was privy to where the 4 of them got together and talked, and Prouty refers to the elites being even who's above them. Now, who's above Stalin, who's above Roosevelt, who's above Churchill, who knows? But apparently it scared these people with the nuclear bomb so bad that they decided at that point, according to Prouty, that all wars from then on would be fought in third world countries. They would have no direct objective for victory for the military. And when you look over the past 50 years, that's exactly what has happened. So, you know, the truth is in what happened. And when you look at it, it's exactly what Fletcher Prouty talked about.
You know, of course, I don't know what to think of all the specifics. I mean, I read what you wrote, and it's interesting and compelling in many ways. But, you know, for those who are skeptical, then you look at Iraq. We sold them weapons. Don Rumsfeld sold them weapons and then invaded Iraq for an indefinite war with no end to get rid of those weapons.
Yep. Well, we also did the same thing with Iran.
Well, we haven't invaded them yet, but...
Well, we haven't invaded them, but we've supplied Iran with massive amount of weapons to fight with, too. We supplied both Iran and Iraq with the weapons that they used against each other.
And the guy who set up Halliburton's office in Tehran, Iran, against American law, but he did it through a subsidiary in the Cayman Islands, was a guy named Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
So you look at this and you go, things that make me go, So we're talking to Governor Jesse Ventura. The book is American Conspiracies. It's also got a show on True TV. Governor, my thought is, in the old days when you had private corporations and private banks, and you had the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, et cetera, you could do a smoke-filled room, right? But these days, in some ways, it is scarier, as you mentioned earlier, because they don't need the smoke-filled room and they don't need to get together. I feel that since the advent of public corporations, the system self-selects the greedy, self-selects the people who are going to play ball. So if you need to have generals who are going to start wars or who are going to advocate for longer wars, well, it helps that they're going to get hired by the military-industrial complex later, after they retire.
Sure.
And that goes on for the bankers. Of course, if you're Nomi Prince at Goldman Sachs and you grow a conscience, well, you're no longer welcome there. And they look for someone who's not encumbered with a conscience, who can go ahead and buy politicians.
Always remember that in any war, regardless of big or small and where it takes place, there are people that profit tremendously from it. You know, there's money to be made at war, and that's one of the reasons I believe they fight them.
And now, finally, let me ask you about how it works in present day, too, because you see people like Glenn Beck and O'Reilly and Hannity and the whole right-wing media push for the wars and push for deregulation of the banks, all the things that wind up helping these same guys. So, to put it in a kind of a funny way, do you think that they're in on it?
I don't know. I don't think they're directly in on it, but I think that the higher-ups are in on it. These are just the mouthpieces. You know, they're the ones that go out there and are the mouthpieces that we see. But clearly, I know, because when I had my short-lived thing with MSNBC, my biggest fight with them was they were telling me what subjects I had to cover. You know, it came down from upstairs, and these guys will deny it, but I know it's not true. All of the stuff comes down from upstairs, because if you look at all their shows, they all do the same topics. It's just a different guy's perspective of it.
So do you think that that's the same process of self-selection? So if Mike Maloney is a left-winger who rants on the left, well, he doesn't get hired by Roger Ailes because Roger Ailes isn't interested in that message on Fox News.
Yep.
But if you're pro-war and you do the same kind of rants, well, then you get hired by Fox News.
Yep.
If you're
the great example was myself. When I came out of office, I was the hottest commodity out there. I was the voice of the independent. I got CNN, MSNBC, and Fox got in a bidding war for me. MSNBC won. I went to do my show. They were putting together a 5-day-a-week show for me, and then all of a sudden a phone call came to one of my subordinates, and they said, "Is it true that the governor doesn't support the war in Iraq?" This was right before the Iraq War was going on, getting ready to hype up. And they said, "No." There was a deadening pause at the other end. They said, "Does New Jersey know about this?" And the person said, "I don't know." And then they said, "Is there a chance he'd change his mind?" And this person had worked with me 4 years at the Capitol. He said, "I don't think so," because he said the governor's pretty staunch when he gets, you'd really have to sway him. And the war ain't going to sway him. Well, it turned out they wouldn't put me on the air. They paid me for all 3 years. They pulled my show. And I sat and collected paychecks, and I couldn't say anything because my contract said I couldn't do any cable nor any news shows for 3 years.
That's really interesting, because that's exactly what they did to Ashley Banfield. When she made the speech against the Iraq War,
Yep.
They literally put her in a closet and
Yep.
paid the rest of her contract so she couldn't talk to anyone else.
Yep, and they did it also, if you recall, to Phil Donahue.
That's right.
They had just hired Phil. Phil was their highest-rated show, and they pulled him. Have you ever heard of a network pulling its highest-rated show? Never.
And
remember, this was at the time that MSNBC was trying to be Fox Light. They weren't liberal like they are now.
Right. So, I remember they put out a story at the time saying that you want to do the show from Mexico, and that's why they didn't want to do it.
That's a complete lie. All I did was I said I wanted to do the show from Minneapolis and my reasoning was this: not only was it my home and I didn't want to relocate and I had the power to do it, but second, I told them, look, all these shows take place on the East Coast and the West Coast. Why not get a Midwestern perspective for a change?
So, but then what happened there? Because, MSNBC...
They wouldn't put me on because of my opposition to the Iraq War.
I hear you, but so then MSNBC, you think, is not putting you on and not putting all those people on because they're against the Iraq War, but now their prime time, at least, not their morning, but their prime time is progressive. So what do you think changed?
Ratings. They finally realized they were never going to beat Fox. So then they made it. Well, if you saw, when Keith Olbermann first came on, he was conservative. Then all of a sudden he made a about face 180 degrees and became a liberal.
I'm sure he would contest that.
Well, he might contest it, but at the moment he was hired, they were still a conservative station.
Let me ask you one more thing. When you were the governor, you say in the book that the CIA came and talked to you. What did they talk to you about?
Well, they asked if they could meet with me in the basement of the Capitol, and I agreed, and I went down there. There were 23 members of the CIA. All they wanted to know about was how I got elected.
Well, why do they care? They're not supposed to operate inside the United States. So.
Exactly. I asked them that. Well, I called my friend Dick Marcinko later because I was confused too. And do you know who Dick Marcinko is?
No.
Well, he writes all those Road Warrior books. He's the former commander of SEAL Team 6, friend of mine that is very well connected, operated Red Cell and all that. He's a true warrior. And I called Dick and I told him what happened, and Dick said, well, he said, I don't know, but I can give you my opinion. I said, tell me. He said, they didn't see you coming. So they're trying to learn how you won. Now, did they want to know to stop another independent from being elected? That's what I think it was for. So they could learn how I got elected so that they could attempt later to derail any other third-party candidates that could do what I did.
You know, there's, of course, a theory that people, whoever they are not interested in people who don't play ball. You don't play ball. Elliot Spitzer didn't play ball. Eric Massa didn't play ball. Pete Stark didn't play ball. Ashley Banfield didn't play ball. And you begin to see a pattern here. Let's take Elliot Spitzer as an example. Do you think that was a coincidence that the bank happened to out him on those finances, or do you think that was part of a larger agenda?
I really don't know. I haven't studied the Spitzer, what happened to him, but I do know he was investigating things that I don't think they wanted him going into.
Yeah, well, that's certainly. I remember when he got.
And then, unfortunately for him, he decided to be a womanizer, and they nailed him. You know, if you're going to take him on, you better make sure you got no skeletons in the closet.
Because they will come for you.
Well, absolutely. He's a prime example of it. They buried him over that thing, and he lost his governorship over it.
All right. Jesse Ventura's new book is American Conspiracies. You can check out his show on True TV as well. Governor Ventura, great having you on the Young Turks. Really
always a pleasure to be on, and keep up the good work and keep talking about stuff because, you know, we're going to have to fight for our First Amendment rights here pretty quick. We've already lost the Fourth Amendment, illegal search and seizure, and they've taken away habeas corpus from us, and I can't believe President Obama hasn't reinstated that stuff and got rid of the Patriot Act.
No, there are a lot of unbelievable things about the direction Obama's taken.
Yep. I think they got to him. Whoever they is.
All right, we're going to have to talk about that next time. That's a good topic. Governor Ventura, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Young Turks.